powers to the state, guarantee that certain things that belong to the people as individuals would remain in their hands forever. End of discussion. That's why we wrote the document. That's why anybody who means it writes a constitution like that. I've studied a lot of constitutions, and the USSR had a very interesting freedom of speech clause. It guaranteed freedom of speech not only for individuals who wanted to speak, but also newspapers and television, because it was written, or at least revised, after television had been created. Wow, that's the strongest freedom of expression clause in any constitution in the history of mankind. But then there was another clause near the end that said anything not in the interest of the Soviet state is illegal. Okay, that's a take-back clause. We don't have a take-back clause in our Constitution. And mind you, whenever the Supreme Court says, oh, we're going to amend the Constitution, they never use the word amend. But when we're going to amend the Constitution, what are they doing?
Changing.
Well, yeah, they're changing it.
Ready.
What is the most basic right, most basic political right that human beings have? It's in the Declaration of Independence.
To absolve the government if it is not.
To reform the government if we're not satisfied with what it does. The power is in your hands. And how is that power exercised? The Declaration is a statement of principles. The Constitution is a law designed to carry out those principles. And one of those principles is popular control. That's in Article 5. So when the Supreme Court starts playing games with the Constitution, it is attacking your most basic political right. Your rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, those are God-given. So says Jefferson, so says that document. And I assigned him to write that, by the way, because I knew he was a heck of a good writer. Yes, sir?
Did Jefferson actually say the primary reason for the populace to have the right to bear arms is as a last resort to protect themselves from the government?
Of course, you go around the internet and you will find websites that have collected and sourced. I despise things that have a list of quotations and don't source them, because some of them just ain't right. And I've chased more than a few quotations down rabbit holes and been able to find where it came from. But there are hundreds of quotes from all of the framers, or almost all of them. Remember, some of them couldn't read and write. Button Gwinnett, after who Gwinnett County is named. There are only 12 known examples of his signature because he could not read and he could not write. He could barely scribble his name. He was a bright guy, but he was illiterate. Yes, sir.
You said that we have the power, and one of the issues that I've dealt with over time is I've talked to people, sitting around the coffee table with Burger King or something. I say, now, when you vote, show me where you are in relationship to this group of people that you're voting in, say the governor and on down, his staff. And invariably, they'll say, oh, I belong down here.
No, you're at the top.
But that is an issue that needs to be emphasized in groups like this. That's not true. We're at the X over that governor, and sometimes they call it the sovereign elect.
Well, you are the sovereign elector. Thomas Jefferson said the only safe repository for the ultimate power is in the people. Now, that doesn't mean the people won't make mistakes. And prohibition in and then prohibition out of the Constitution of the United States is an example of exactly that. But his point was that that's where the ultimate power had to be. And we all felt the same way.
One of the mistakes that on his desk that says the buck stops here, that was a supreme error.
Well, no, in terms of executive responsibility, he's quite right. I mean, you see people in Washington today who are masters in obfuscation, especially if they're lawyers. Lawyers are the squid of the literary seas. When threatened, they turned everything to black. There was someone in the back who had a question.
It was
Yes,
actually, someone asked it earlier.
Okay. Did you have a question? Yes, sir.
One of the things that's intrigued me about the current situation involving the health care and attempt and so forth, including the bailout, do you expect that there will be challenges involving the federal government's right to do things such as dictate compensation by a CEO for a CEO or anything like that?
It depends on whether it's a CEO who has accepted money from the federal government. Remember one of the Pied Piper of Hamelin, the children's tales. And the Pied Piper got rid of the rats, but then they didn't pay him. So the Pied Piper got rid of the children. And the motto of that is, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Consider this. Is it the business of Congress to set the speed limits in the state of Montana? Yes or no?
No.
No.
They did it, the maximum speed laws. How did they do it? Anybody know?
By threatening to take away the money that federal government gives.
Absolutely.
They got everybody that way.
Blackmail.
As an article in Time Magazine 30 years ago, when Time Magazine was still worth reading, said about funding for education. If federal funding for education were withdrawn, first of all, there'd be a loud sucking sound. The federal government said to Montana and all the other states, please would you establish a 55-mile-an-hour maximum speed limit in your state? We would really appreciate it if you do that. But if you don't do that, we will take away all of your federal funding. And there was a loud sucking sound, and all the states fell in line and passed the laws. Now, the speed limit is gone, now it's the drunk driving regulations. But as long as you accept federal money, then you're under the gun. Then the whip hand can go out, and you must go where they go, where they want you to go, or else they will withdraw the money. So that's the way that Congress can control the speed laws in Montana. Now, with respect to any company that has accepted bailout money, the question whether the bailouts themselves are constitutional, and that's going to be tested, of course. But assuming it is, then once Citibank accepts a few $1 billion from the federal government, but who's counting, then the federal government can put a condition on that money and say, you can't pay your executives more than X. Now, if the federal government says to a company that did not accept any federal money, hey, it's a bad idea for executives in the United States in a company to be paid more than this amount, I expect that not only be a constitutional challenge, but it would succeed. Because unless you open the door for the wolf, you're safe. Provided that the Supreme Court is still going to enforce the Constitution, rather than say, well, we find it politically desirable that this result occur, and therefore we're going to do a tap dance around the law and find a way to say yes. I have ultimate distaste for a member of the Supreme Court who, if he or she doesn't have the brains within himself or herself to decide it correctly, they have staffs for that purpose. So when they trample the Constitution, it is the ultimate indignity and abuse. But I think, back to the question, that if compensation for people not in a federally aided company is established, it hasn't been established yet. So far it's been everybody who took the money, then it would be unconstitutional.